Track Wrestling here at the National Wrestling Hall of Fame Dan Gable Museum with Dan Gable himself. We are here for the Bobby Douglas ceremony, and Bobby Douglas right there. You guys go way back. How did he shape your career as a competitor? Let's start that angle first.
Okay, well, we'll start there. There's a guy named Bob Buzzard that was East Waterloo state champion that went to Iowa State, was a great wrestler for Iowa State, and he actually was on the Olympic team in '72 in Greco-Roman, my same weight. But Bob Buzzard really taught me how to wrestle. He was an East Waterloo guy, but he taught me how to wrestle. My dad and his dad was good friends. So Bob Buzzard actually was more in the era. He was like 6 years older than me or 7 years older than me. So he was kind of in the era of Bobby Douglas when Bobby was at Oklahoma State. So I don't know if he competed against him or not, but at the same time, information would be coming back to me through Bobby, who would be working with me on the mat, and he, through Bob Buzzard, who would be telling me about this guy named Bobby Douglas. So, you know, I followed a little bit the college and the international at that time, and you know, he was a guy that was making world teams and getting world medals. His name was always up there, and so you kind of just started following him. But he still, you know, he wasn't winning all the matches. You know, he might get a medal, but you know, he, for some reason, you know, he might have got a concussion during a match and had to pull out and didn't get a chance to get the gold or whatever. But Bobby was a guy that I heard about at a pretty early age. So, you know, once I went to Iowa State and I made a name for myself there, he was now beyond Oklahoma State, and he was out wrestling internationally. So all of a sudden, Bobby Douglas ended up being at Iowa State as an assistant coach. And actually, in the '68 Olympic trials, I entered those on a whim, just like that, and he was the guy that won the Olympic trials. I got third, you know, when I was a young guy, and then I got to go to an Olympic camp because of that, and I got to work with Bobby Douglas, Wayne Wells, Rick Sanders was around, and so I remember these guys really well, and I studied them. I sat in these little saunas with them that were like handmade, not like the kind you make today. They had light bulbs they'd screw into these little boxes, and we'd get in there, and I'd be in this little room with them, and so all of a sudden I'd be hearing the lingo, and I'd be hearing the conversation about these guys that were on these world teams and getting world medals, and I'm around them. So I'm a kid that's learning, but I'm also a kid that's competing against them in practice at those trials. They brought me in because I was a collegiate champion as a sophomore, and you know what's funny? I did pretty well with them. And I can remember scoring points on him in practice matches. And we had some matches that were really probably high scoring. And you know, it was giving me confidence. So, you know, as we continue to travel along, all of a sudden Bobby kind of is getting towards the end of his career, and he comes to Iowa State. He becomes a graduate assistant with Coach Nichols, and he teaches me some moves that I had never seen before. And it just so happens it came at a great time with me because I was injured. I got a knee injury, and I had a hard time being offensive. And so I was learning how to score defensively because of he's showing me some moves from there, and they worked really good. So it really helped me at a time where, you know, I needed to learn how to wrestle in all directions. But we also competed against each other, and we had some really tough matches, and some tough matches to the point where he said he wasn't going to wrestle me no more. And all of a sudden I was looking at him, I said, I'm glad he's not, because you know why? I'm hurt. You hurt me. You hurt me, and I can't even turn my head and neck. And so you know, it's one of these things that we're helping each other. But when I started becoming the guy in the world and Olympic level, I actually flew in because he was coaching out in Boston at the time, and we had practices together, and he was building me up unbelievably. to the fact, because he didn't quite win the gold. I think he got a silver and a bronze in the Worlds and Olympics, and he was telling me why I could win and why, because of this, and he really believed it, and I believed him. Whether he believed it or not, for sure, I believed him. That was the key, and that was a sign of a good coach. And then all of a sudden I get my string going of wrestling championships, you know, and so we lose to Jim Gibbons, and so Jim Gibbons stops the Gable string of 9 in a row, and he goes to 10 and doesn't get 10. But then the next year I thought I'd come right back and win again, and Arizona State's coach is Bobby Douglas, and we're going to win the Nationals right away again after we lost him. But all of a sudden Arizona State wins like 20 matches in a row in the final day and wrestlebacks, and they beat us. And so, you know, Arizona State, that was their only national title, but he claims that, and he had to do it with an unbelievable victory. So he's the one guy, Douglas, that all of a sudden was really technically involved in the sport. He put out books, he had techniques, you know, he was really into that. And that's what I needed after I got to a certain level of excellence. I needed to learn the sport better, and it was him that really kind of showed me that there's a lot more to the sport from strategies. He could have used some of my stuff too, you know, just attitude and fight and all that, and conditioning, which he was good, but he probably would have been a world champion for sure. And so I had the chance, though, to pick up some of his stuff, and because of that, I became a world and Olympic champion.